My name's Jeff Monahan. Welcome to this episode of Story. Our guest is Linda Byrne O'Riordan, author of The Life She Chose and Hello, My Friend. Linda is a Mackenzie Friend of the Court in London and worked as a paralegal in the Irish court system. We're going to be talking about the case of the death of Quhey Saunders. Linda will be speaking to us from England. Hello, Linda. What can you tell us about the incident that took place the day he was killed?
Well, Jeff, on the 26th of June 2017, Quhey Saunders and some members of his family, his aunt and his uncle and a friend of his, were returning home from a wedding that was held in Wales, which is in the United Kingdom, wouldn't be classed as the United Kingdom as such, but it's in England. On their way home, just about not far from his home, they decided to pull into a petrol station on the M25 for some refreshments. So the car pulled in right near the door, and while they pulled in, there was a van on the forecourt, which would have been the van of both of the accused. Quhey emerged from the car to get something to drink, and the van drove off. Sometime later, within minutes, the van came speeding back onto the forecourt of the petrol station, going around the wrong side of a roundabout to get back to the station, causing nearly collisions between many vehicles, and at one stage it nearly struck a pedestrian in their pursuit of Quhey. I mean, doing that alone proved they had no regard for human life, going the wrong way around the roundabout, and those coming the right way around it, their lives were in danger. Whatever entailed when they left the petrol station, whatever conversation they had between them, obviously led to them coming back. And they parked right in front of the vehicle that Quhey had been travelling in, as to block it so that it could not leave. An argument pursued from there. The two guys got out of the van. They started arguing with Quhey. Quhey, I suppose, felt threatened in a way. It was 2 against 1. I have been told by the main witness in this trial, Raphael Francis, that he's seen it. He's seen it all from start to finish. He said that the two guys, first of all, they beat up Quhey's uncle, kind of rendering him unconscious. And then they pursued Quhey. The prosecution would argue that Quhey then removed his top, which he did. He removed his T-shirt. I suppose he felt he had to defend himself after seeing what happened to his uncle. And both these guys, they set about trying to intimidate and attack Quhey, provoking him. Basically, they tried their best to provoke him, but at never at any stage did Quhey throw a punch or hit anybody. I have photographic evidence of Quhey's hands as he lay in the hospital. There's not one mark. I have one here I can show you. There's Quhey's hand being held by a family member. There is no mark whatsoever on Quhey's hands. He did not hit anybody at any stage or strike out. If anything, he was the one who was trying to defend himself against two men. Quhey entered the shop, and the argument anyway kind of, as they say, cooled off a bit. So I suppose on Quhey's side, Quhey thought it was over basically. So he proceeded into the shop, and the other two guys went back to the van. But they went back and retrieved a builder's whisk and a shovel and followed Quhey into the shop itself. Raphael Francis, the guy who was the main witness, would later tell me that he's seen Quhey being struck twice with the shovel by Quhey's number one, we'll call him. And I suppose they stunned Quhey, belted the shovel twice into the head. Now, the cameras in the store were not actually working in the location where this assault occurred, but Raphael did witness this. And what he did not witness was the fatal blow, which came from accused number two. But he has been seen on CCTV entering the garage, of course, with the builder's whisk in his hand and leaving it. Now, this builder's whisk was described by the pathologist at the trial as a blunt instrument. And the pathologist said it would have took brute force for this to have entered Quhey's skull, causing a 10 centimetre laceration to his brain, not his skin or his skull, but his actual brain. And the pathologist also stated that it would have took as much brute force to retract it. And he did remove it from Quhey's skull after hitting him with it.
Is this
And then they both
representative?
jumped.
Is this representative of the weapon that was used? This particular type of thing? That's what we're just trying to know what it is that we're speaking about.
Builder's whisk.
Yes.
It's a builder's whisk, it's called. These guys were kind of freshly ready for work, or coming from work. It was between 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. that day, whereas Quhey had been at a 3-day wedding, quite tired, had some alcohol in his system. I would like to state he was not the designated driver on that day, but rather his friend was. CCTV footage has proven that. So it would have rendered him more vulnerable also towards two men who had been well rested up and heading to work. One of these men, who would later claim to, being in fear of his life of Quhey Saunders, was actually a boxer himself who held titles. Quhey never held any titles in boxing. He had left boxing at a young age, but he did work out. It's Quhey's brother would be the boxer, who wasn't there on that day. So Quhey was quite fit, I will admit, but as I said, on that day, he would have been more vulnerable than most days, having been at a 3-day wedding and having consumed alcohol. He wasn't looking for that trouble that day. He didn't want trouble that day. He was on his way home. He had rang ahead. He asked his mother to prepare a bed for him, that he was coming home. He was very, very tired. And that was the last phone call his mom had with him. So it would progress that the detective, the leading detective and the family liaisons officer would tell this family that this is a straightforward case and not to worry, that everything will go in their favour. Raphael Francis had given a full detailed statement on everything he saw, and so the two other guys, it was 30 statements in total took. 6 of them were chosen by the prosecution to be used in the court. Raphael's statement was not used, or neither was his evidence, after being told from day one that he was the number one witness by the leading detective and the family liaisons officer, that he was their leading detective, their leading witness. They would need him number one because of all he had seen. Raphael has informed him he was told to take time off of work. He took 2 weeks unpaid work and waited to be called, and received a text message from the CPS, which would be the Crown Prosecution, telling him that his evidence was not needed. He couldn't understand this after he had witnessed more than anybody. Raphael had sat with Quhey until the ambulance came. He'd done his best. He kept him alive until the ambulance came. He's an ex-army man, and he had been trained in CPR, helping people in distress. So in fact, Quhey's last words were spoken to Raphael, and his last words were "help me," and that's what he was doing. So when it went to court and he received this text message to tell him that his evidence was not needed, he was quite angered by it. He could not understand why. I also spoke to 2 employees in the service station, and they both informed me that they were very, very shocked with the result of this case. They had given statements, and they both had received text messages also telling them that their evidence wasn't needed.
And he received a text not to show up, correct? He received a text?
A text message, yeah, a text message from the Crown Prosecution. They hadn't even the decency to come and knock on his door. A text message. And also all the others did too.
So it's a little odd that if the court or if the attorney is contacting a potential witness and telling them not to show up, that they would do so via a text message as opposed to, like you say, at least contacting them by phone to tell them. Was there ever any suspicion that the text might be coming from someone else? Did he end up going to the court anyway to make sure it was coming from a valid source?
He contacted the CPS. Yes, they were official texts. The family would find out later that it was the defence and the prosecution both came to that conclusion together. Now, during this 2-week trial, it was the defence got most of the say, that the prosecutor himself only testified a little under 2 hours over the whole duration of the 2 weeks on behalf of Quhey Saunders, instead of the defence got most of the say. They claimed self-defence, as I've already stated, when both these men went out of their way in pursuit of Quhey. I mean, they don't sound like two men who were in fear of their life, of anybody. There was the guy who was driving the car, Quhey's friend. He was quite shocked and very frightened. He never left the car at any stage, but he did make an 8.5-hour statement in relation to everything he saw, and his evidence was not used in court. His aunt was called to court, and they tried to make out into court some way like she was an instigator, that she drove it on, whereas Raphael's evidence completely contradicted that. Raphael had said at no stage, Linda, did this woman try to drive any argument on. If anything, she was screaming for somebody to get the police. And after Quhey was injured, she was screaming for somebody to get an ambulance, which can be viewed on YouTube, because he said a lot of people were filming with their mobile phones. He said to me, I know there's footage out there somewhere, because there was a lot of people, while this was going on, filming with their mobile phones. One person has uploaded a video on YouTube, which we found, and it shows Quhey lying down, and the police were there at this stage. You can see Raphael in it, he's in red, standing over Quhey. But you can also hear his aunt crying, very upset, and looking for an ambulance.
The fact that he was indeed murdered, there's no discrepancy in terms of the physical evidence that proves that. The odd thing is, it seems, with the case that the verdict, they were pretty much exonerated of any sort of charge. He was definitely killed by the accused, so there's no argument there. What was the reasoning that would result in a verdict that gave them no culpability whatsoever? So if it ended up not first-degree murder, they didn't go there with the intent to kill him, but to engage in an argument, even an altercation physically. But to say that they didn't do anything that would result in any sort of conviction, manslaughter, murder in the third degree, or whatever it may be in the United States. What do you think was the reasoning that evidence was withheld, that the result of the trial was simply that they were off scot-free?
Well, like I said, they pleaded self-defence. They made it sound like they were in fear of their lives. And a lot of the evidence was withheld from the trial, as I've already said. Raphael's evidence, which would have thrown a whole new light on it for any jury, had they have heard it. And also,
even something that would be self-defense, since they initiated the argument and they actually had weapons and he did not, it would seem that it would be, there's some missing piece here, that they had absolutely no conviction whatsoever. Is there, what's behind that, do you think?
We don't know. That's why we're here. That's why I've come on your show. That's why I'm helping the family. We want to know, his mother, his father, his siblings, they want answers. They want to know, how did these two men walk scot-free? One of them is on YouTube. It's still there. Accused number one, the guy with the shovel, as he gave himself up. He stated in the video, I did not kill him, which we presume he was referring to the other guy as having killed him. Yeah. But he did hit him in the head twice with a shovel, which was never brought up at court at any stage whatsoever because of Raphael's evidence being absent from it. Two men, one of them, who did strike Quhey twice into the head with a shovel, the other, who would ultimately be his killer, walked free from court that day because they played self-defence. There was a video was played in the court of Quhey working out, and they made out that they were in fear of the life of this man. I mean, they had ample opportunity to leave that petrol station. When they returned to the van for the weapons, they could have got into the van and drove off if they were so afraid. When they had the argument and they walked away, I presume Quhey thought it was over. So he continued on into the shop.
So his uncle was beaten while
other,
he wasn't actually right there, correct?
No, he would have been gone into the shop, but these guys were on the way to the van to get the weapons. But before they retrieved these weapons, they beat his uncle unconscious on the forecourt, which was witnessed by Raphael. Mm-hmm. Now, Raphael didn't want to get involved at that stage. He said he heard the Irish accents. He thought it was just an argument, amongst Irish people. So he continued into the shop also. Mm-hmm. But while he was in the shop, the other two guys, after knocking Quhey's uncle unconscious, I suppose that was leaving Quhey more vulnerable, having nobody to help him. They entered the shop with the weapons and started intimidating Quhey. And then they would later say that they felt in fear of him in the shop. Why follow him into the shop? Why retrieve the weapons? Why did you just get in your car and drive off?
So it doesn't make any sense. I agree with you that this was their story, and yet the evidence bears out quite differently with the eyewitnesses as well as the forensic evidence for what actually physically happened to him. Is there any way to have some sort of mistrial at this late date, or is there something to do with this type of double jeopardy clause where they cannot be tried again?
Yeah, this double jeopardy does not allow them to be charged twice with the same offence. But with the route on taking, it does allow the coroner or the judge, especially the coroner, to decide for this case to be re-entered back into court with both the accused having to answer. And to have that done, we'll be having the inquest into his death, where the 30 witnesses who were not allowed to testify at the original trial, we can have them subpoenaed, or they can come voluntarily and give their evidence at the inquest in front of the judge and the coroner. The inquest I will be helping the family with having the inquest on, and all the witnesses, as I said, who were left out of the original trial, will be testifying at the inquest. Now, this judge at the inquest will get to hear what the jury and the judge in the initial hearing did not get to hear.
And how close are you to getting something like that on the docket to be seen?
Yeah, it will be done this year. I want to talk about Quhey. I wanted to talk about what type of a person he was, if you don't mind. He was a kind-hearted young man. He used to go to London to feed the homeless. Mm-hmm. When he died, when the decision was made to turn off his life support machine, his parents, his mother and his father made a very, very unselfish decision to donate his organs, saving the lives of 7 other human beings. And I think that, Quhey should not just be remembered for the life he lived, but also the life he gave in his death. But in his death, he saved 7 lives, one of whom was a child.
Yeah.
His family, in the height of their own, grief and shock and hurt, they still made that sacrifice, and they gave their sons organs, which is completely unheard of within the travelling community. So much so that the NHS in the United Kingdom personally thanked the family, because thousands of people, including travellers and settled people, signed up as donors because of Quhey's death, to thank the family personally.
Seems like such a political thing, potentially degree of national things going on between Ireland and Great Britain. Is that part of it as well, do you believe?
As I said, I don't want to speculate. I know Quhey was an English traveller. His mother does descend from Cork. Her dad was a Cork man from Ireland, but he was born and reared in the United Kingdom. I don't know, it could be prejudicial, but as I said, the accused were both travellers also, so anything would be that I would say in reference to that would be pure speculation. The family was totally dependent upon the prosecution, and the defence put up a fight for accused 1 and 2, both the barristers. The prosecution in this case did not fight, the prosecutor, sorry, did not fight hard enough for who he should have been defending that day, and that was a man who was dead, Quhey Saunders. As I said, the jury in this case made their decision based upon the evidence they were given. I can't understand how they didn't even reach a conclusion of manslaughter, to be quite honest with you. The Saunders family are completely destroyed over this, only for, I suppose, they have me helping them. They didn't know what direction to take either, you know, in highlighting the case and in highlighting the injustice of it. I mean, it's a complete miscarriage of justice.
Have there been any other
Yes.
cases like this surrounding the same types of groups of people where people have walked free from crimes that it would seem obvious that they should have been convicted for?
Yes, there was a couple of other cases. I won't mention any names or such, but I have been contacted by 2 other people who's the murderers of their sons walked free from the Central Criminal Courts in London, also the Old Bailey. And they've held a few protests, and you know, they've tried to highlight what happened. Each and every one of them had the same result, you know, acquittal in the 3 cases. You know, a lot of people have suffered injustices within the criminal court system in the United Kingdom. I mean, you have the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4. There was films made on these people. Jerry Conlon of the Guildford 4, sure, In the Name of the Father, that was a complete injustice he suffered too. These cases, there's a lot of, as I said, I've helped a lady in the family court system, and there's a lot of injustice. A lot of stuff is held in secret. A lot of stuff is held back from the juries. A lot of stuff is held back from the judges. It's just their legal system. It's the system itself. It's failing people. It's failing not just travellers. The other 2 ladies weren't travellers, and they were failed by the same court, the Central Criminal Courts in London, the Old Bailey. The murderers of their sons walked free also.
What can people do to help who see this show? What would, other than just being aware of it, is there anything that you would like people to do? Anyone to contact, letters, petitions, that sort of thing?
Yeah, to write to the Crown Prosecutor in the United Kingdom, to write to the Old Bailey in London. You'll get the address on Google. You can Google it there. It's the Central Criminal Courts, Old Bailey in London. To write to the CPS, the Crown Prosecution, and get an email address online. And you know, to bombard them with this Quhey Saunders case. How did these 2 men walk free? Doing a full in-depth investigative documentary with Pete Middleton Pictures in London. Pete and his partner Emma are quite known in the United Kingdom for exposing the CPS and the family courts. They made the 2 DVDs that became very infamous in Europe, called Traffic 1 and 2, where they speak about forced adoptions and the corruption that's going on within the family courts. So they're doing a full documentary, on-ground documentary, in relation to Quhey's case, where because yourselves being in America, we've had to do it by Skype, but with Pete being in England and his partner Emma, they can they can interview myself, they will be interviewing family members, they will be interviewing witnesses who were left out of the trial, and, you know, it will be, and as I said, an on-ground, it's a documentary that's going to be done, and we're all meeting now the first week of March, and the filming will be beginning in the 2nd or 3rd week of March, and should be ready and available by the end of March, beginning of April, you know, for the public to view.
It's definitely a case not only with Quhey, but with everyone else who's been involved, and certainly for the families who have had to live with the result of this. And there's no final solution for losing him, but it is something I think that is really important for people to be made aware of, and hopefully try to find out what's behind all of it, and to stop it from ever happening to anyone else again. Well, it seems like a very important thing to be pursuing. So again, I commend you for putting so much effort and time into it. And it's not just for this case, but for all past cases and all future instances like this, that hopefully things like this will be able to be stopped or at least lessened by your efforts. Well, thank you. And it's been a real pleasure, Linda. Take care.
You too. God bless. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Tonight we've been talking with Linda Byrne O'Riordan on the death and subsequent trial of the murder of Quhey Saunders. Please take a few moments and find out anything you can about this case. There's quite a few unanswered questions going on right now in Great Britain with this sort of issue. So thank you once again for tuning in to Story, and we'll see you next time. Good night.